let's talk about D&D 6th edition. Hey everybody, Bobby here. Different setup. This is the temporary setup due to the spine issues. If you hadn't seen the update about that, and if you don't care, that's fine. Oddly enough, it ends up closer to what our very first videos looked like. Anyways, lately, this pops up every few years, sometimes even every few months. But lately, I've been seeing a lot of questions, and then as I'm planning this video, a lot of other videos and discussion about what is going to be in the 6th edition of Dungeons and Dragons. And this isn't going to be like the top 5 things that'll appear, because while I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think's likely going to carry over, what is not going to change based on past events and all of that, before any of that, while this may make a lot of people just go, all right, I got the gist and leave, I'm going to give you the simple version. The 6th edition of Dungeons and Dragons is not coming anytime soon. Okay? Wizards of the Coast is making way too much money off 5th edition. There is still a lot of gas in the gas tank and a lot of things they can do with it because of how much they slowed the output of content for 5th edition, that we have years to go. Now, will that be 10 years? Will that be 5 years? Will that be 3 years till they announce something and 5 years till it comes out? That remains to be seen, especially since it does seem that the book releases are speeding up a bit, which means we're kind of over the crest. But guys, we're on the back half of a decade now. Over the crest could still mean over 5 years. That's entirely possible. Now, with that, some of the first comments I saw, and even a great comment in one of my videos, was things like Dungeons and Dragons should get rid of hit points. And I see people that go, Dungeons and Dragons should get rid of spell slots, or they should make a setting neutral system. And some people predicting that the next thing they'll do is make a setting neutral system and then make D&D as a setting and all of this. That's not going to happen. At least no time soon, because here's the thing. Hasbro, not D&D, not Wizards of the Coast, but Hasbro, the people who sign the checks of the people who sign the checks, are not going to screw with the D&D formula that much. They are terrified of another 4th edition happening. And there were actually some really good design elements in 4th edition, and they threw it all out. But the big takeaway, it seems like Hasbro took from it, was 4th edition changed too much. Everyone left. There's other issues with 4th edition, things like their releases, which they've also modified towards, and things like that. But there was a lot of, this isn't D&D anymore, so everyone left. And they lost a huge market share when that happened. Hasbro's answer to that was 5th edition, which was, let's basically Flanderize Dungeons and Dragons.
Love roosters, geese love ganders, everyone else loves Ned Flanders.
Not me.
Let's make the most D&D version of D&D, which it really is. Elves are super elfy, dwarves are super dwarfy, and the main thing is the game is built to bring in new people. The funny thing is I do actually think, at least at first, that was kind of an accident. The game was built to bring in former players, players of 2nd edition, players of OD&D, players of Malvé D&D, which before 5th, that was like my go-to D&D, and sometimes it still kind of is. But that's what they were building for. And then they were also doing that in a way to try and not alienate the 3.5 fans that they've already lost, to try and bring them back. Funny thing is, a lot of the assumed core rules that are actually optional are things the 3.5 community brought in because they were core in 3.5. Now, will 6th edition be even more modular? Probably. The make D&D your D&D has worked phenomenally for them. And will 6th edition maybe have even more built in from the beginning kind of modularity to adapt to a sci-fi setting or to a modern setting or to any of this kind of stuff, yeah, that entirely could happen, and I would predict it will. But the first books to come out are still going to be Dungeons and Dragons, and they're going to be fantasy, because Hasbro cares about the brand, not the game. Anyone who's saying what's going to come out in 6th edition based on what the rest of the TTRPG community is doing and based on how this is selling and what this community wants, Hasbro doesn't care. Hasbro cares about selling the most copies of their IP. That could be the core books, that could be card games, board games, coloring books. That's what they care about. So will a 6th edition come? Eventually. And it'll probably come more than anything to retcon, I'm going to put big quotes around that, but to retcon the race stuff that they're already addressing in supplement. This isn't about whether or not you agree with that. This is about whether or not they can sell that as a product to get more people buying the books than before. And it will. It will sell them more books, so they're more likely to do it. Right now, honestly, the answers in Tasha's I felt were pretty lazy and half done. It was dipping their toes in the water. And then with the new Ravenloft book, with the new Ancestries, it's taking it deeper. And I think the Ancestries are going to be a lot closer to what we're going to see races as. I think we're still going to have races. I think in 6th edition, we're going to have races which are going to be much smaller. And they're going to be packages of a few things. Like, do you get dark vision? Do you get this? Do you get that? But they're not ability score modifiers, and probably one or two of the abilities you would normally get within a race. And then you'll get your Ancestry. And Ancestry may also fold in background. And background may go away and they may just expand that. Or they'll do Ancestry and like occupation. That's just what I'm predicting from here. But looking at it, that's the more likely route they'll go when the time comes. But this is years from now. Now, is there someone at Wizards of the Coast already noodling of, what should start going in 6th edition? Is it on someone's spreadsheet? Maybe. That's not the game being made. But I think that's going to be the biggest change. Is HP going to go anywhere? No. Will there be a modified optional rule for wounds? I think that would be cool. But it's such a different flow of play for those two types of games. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not there. But HP, not going to go anywhere. Will spell slots go away? This is the one I find interesting. First of all, I'm not going to say fancy and magic. Okay? I did a whole video on this. A whole video is one of the mini videos. But I did a video about this. 5th edition isn't fancy and magic. It's just the spell slot concept from fancy and magic. But the rest of it got ditched because it's kind of not great, in my opinion. And I think in a lot of other people's opinions. The current version, while it has spell slots and spell levels, is no longer Vancian. Because if you want to cast Magic Missile 3 times, you don't have to prepare it 3 times. It doesn't vanish from your brain when you cast it once. That is a key component of what made Vancian magic Vancian. It's what tied it all up in the books they're based on and the lore and how that magic functioned. It's no longer that. So we're just going to call it spell slots. I would personally like to think if they were to overhaul magic, it's all going to look more like the Warlock. I kind of get the feeling that's what they wanted magic to be. 5th edition already has a lot of signs of the things they wanted to change, but either someone in Wizards or definitely someone in Hasbro was too afraid of it being too different because they're looking to bring people back. Perfect example is the Milestone XP system. Okay? That's an optional rule. XP and CRs and all of that is the core rules. But basically all the pre-written adventures use the Milestone system. For the first few years of the game being out, they pushed heavily on use the Milestone system. That's the system they want to be core. But if it were core, it would have alienated too many people. At least that's their fear, that it would have alienated too many people. So they made it optional. Okay, within the optional rules, you can see some of this, and this is where you're going to see a lot of these other things. This is also kind of why I will stand my ground on the Dungeon Master's Guide is not a core book. Will D&D get rid of the 3 core books format? That is an interesting thought. And it's one of those of, if they think they can sell the game as 3 books, they will. The brand ever gets to the point where they feel it needs to be 1 book because the sales of that 1 book are going to make them meaningfully more money than selling 3 books. Yeah, and I think that'd be interesting. But honestly, they already kind of did that with the D&D Basic, and how that was the free version, which again, when the game first came out, they pushed hard, and then they've kind of let you forget about it. And now in the starter sets, they're reselling the free basic rules in print. The starter sets, I think you're going to see more sets, more kind of all-in-one bundles to get you in the door with the starter sets, and then you graduate to the core books, very much the 5th edition model. That model is working. And I don't see it not working in the future unless something drastic changes, because at the end of the day, that's what they're looking for. Other big things like what races will be core, what won't be core, are they going to bring in more and all that? Those, again, years down the line, we have no clue. I think we're going to see ancestries become bigger. HP, magic, all of that's not really going to change. It's still going to be class-based. I'm personally thinking we're going to see more stuff come in that'll be modular in the way to make setting books for other genres, but it's still going to come in as Dungeons & Dragons first and foremost. Now, speaking of that, and yes, I did just recap the whole video so far, minus rambling, though I'm rambling now. What's going to be coming in the next few years? It's still going to be 5th edition. Predictions based on trends. We're probably going to see a few more setting books that also function as a handbook for a genre. Ravenloft is the horror book. I was very disappointed when Candlekeep Mysteries didn't include a foreword or a chapter or something on helping you better run mysteries in D&D. Granted, I personally think there are systems, I got a map from one in the starter set. And then we have Ravenloft that actually is legitimately a toolkit for horror. I don't agree with all of it, but as far as the books that have come out, I think it might be the best book since Xanathar, if you don't count the Essentials kit. The starter sets I count as a totally different product line. And that's the thing, is at least for now, I think we're going to see a book that's kind of useful in some niche stuff, plus the adventures. Saltmarsh is another one of these of, it's a collection of adventures, kind of another Yawning Portal, but then it's all the naval combat rules, even though those rules never come into play in any of the adventures in the book. And then you're going to see the ones that are actual legitimate toolkits, like Ravenloft, like Abyss, all of that stuff. And they're going to kind of go back and forth. We might get another everything. I personally think we'll see maybe one more everything. This is a long shot call, just because Tasha's did not do as well as Xanathar's, and honestly, it wasn't as good. So we'll see where that goes. I think we're going to probably, actually, I think one of the safest bets is we can start talking about 6th edition once they drop Dragonlance. Dragonlance has been hinted at since the core books. Okay? The core books reference Dragonlance directly. And I think that's the carrot they've been holding out to keep people hungry. There's also Dark Sun. But the thing is Dark Sun was in 4th edition. And I fully believe as many people as there are demanding Dark Sun, simply its affiliation with 4th edition might keep it from getting a 5th edition. I hope that's not true, but there are definitely people at Wizards of the Coast, and more than anything at Hasbro, who tell the people at Wizards of the Coast what to do, that want as few things tied to 4th edition as possible. Even now, even this many years later. So, where's 6th edition? It's in the future. What's going to be in it? A lot of the same, but I think they're starting to give us the actual hints now of the things. Stuff like Ancestry, for it to be rooted in the core game, would need some fundamental changes, which is where you're going to see an edition change. Stuff like that. I would like to see the new edition be tweaked in some ways to better handle genres, not sci-fi or modern or Western, but genres like mystery, suspense, horror. Handle those better. Give us some optional mechanics for that. The setting is always going to start with one of the D&D settings because it's about a brand, not a game. I've talked in circles enough. My back's starting to kill me. I'll catch you guys next week.